You're listening to Orange Blaze, a Florida Trail podcast.
It was heartbreaking last year when we went up to the Panhandle,
Oh,
and Sandy got together with a few of her Florida Trail friends and finished up all the last of the road walks and did everything else. But when we walked through the area where the hurricane hit directly
yeah, around Bluntstown, all the.
and drove up and down the one particular road, just back and forth, through me being the driver, and just looking at the devastation that was there. And then we snaked around and finally got to where the trail went back into the woods, and all you saw looked like a lumber truck had crashed, and all the wood had just fallen in one place. There was not a trail.
Yeah, I tried to walk. It was at Alpha. I tried to walk in there, and you couldn't go more than a foot. I mean, it was just the amount of effort the volunteers put in over the past 2 years to open those trails is just mind-blowing.
That was Sandra Friend and John Keatley of Florida Hikes, back for a second time on the podcast. Their first episode on the podcast was episode 3 back in July of 2018. After many years of chatting online, I was finally able to meet Sandra and John at the Billy Goat Day back in January, about a million years ago now. And though I didn't get to really chat with John very long, I was able to talk to Sandra and then go for a hike with her. I wish that weekend hadn't been so short because I know there were so many great stories to hear from these two. Sandra and John have had 2 books published in the last couple of years, the most recent being a Florida Trail Hikes guidebook, in addition to the updated 50 Hikes in Central Florida book before that. The Florida Trail Hikes book was born out of the 50 Hikes series in an effort to showcase the best hikes along the Florida Trail. This episode covers our chat about the 2 books, how we were all adapting to the shutdown for coronavirus in early April when we recorded, as well as Sandra and John's other ventures and adventures. It's a great episode, and if you'd like to keep your pulse on the world of hiking in Florida, these 2 are where to get your information. All right, on to the episode. Okay, how are you guys?
Hey, doing well.
Not bad.
Good. Well, John, I gotta apologize. I actually didn't get a chance to chat with you at Billy Goat Day at all, so I felt bad that we left and it was you were so busy chatting with everybody else.
There were so many people there, which is a wonderful sign. And again, I hope we outgrow the place next year and have to go somewhere else. We could become the largest hiking event in the state.
That'd be pretty crazy. Do you guys have an idea of where you would move to?
No, we stepped back from the Hikers Alliance, which is now FT Through Hike last year. So, Chris and Lynn and Randy, they're all running with it.
And they're doing a wonderful job with it. They really are.
Yeah.
We had a board meeting here, and I basically told them, guys, I'm too old. I don't think fast enough to do all this computers and social media. So one of these youngsters needs to step up. And Chris, because of his background, we could not have picked a better person.
Yeah. I haven't chatted with him in a while, but I think Eleni had mentioned a few places that they were brainstorming, and of course she's kind of stepped away from that as well now too. So I will be interested to see what everybody comes up with for next year. Well, hopefully that we get to have it next year.
Well, they've got Ari and Trucker Bob involved now too, and a couple other folks. So there's a good team there.
Yeah. Well, I was going to talk to you guys too about what's going on right now, with the COVID-19 and just how well organized y'all have been in getting all the closures up on your website and keeping everybody up to date on that. How are you guys managing all of that?
Oh God, it takes like 2 hours every morning to scour the websites. I've stopped doing it as frequently now that so many counties have shut things down. But I kind of had the framework in place back when we got hit with Hurricane Irma. There were just so many closures around the state of everything that I just saved a whole heck of a lot of links on our desktop computer. And then when this started happening, had to, of course, refresh them all because you know how frequently government sites change.
And luckily, she is a very early riser. So she usually does this before the rest of the working people now are on their computers trying to do their work and everything slows down.
And it helps when, we get a heads up or somebody in the tourism industry will reach out. Like yesterday, heard from somebody who we know in Charlotte County who said, hey guys, even though our county said they closed all the parks, they changed their mind and they opened up the natural areas again. So, flip that switch on that today, and that made a lot of people happy that they still had somewhere to go down there in Southwest Florida.
Right.
It's pretty bleak in Southeast Florida, but that's where the most cases are at this point.
Yeah. So I guess, what does this landscape look like for your area on the Space Coast? Is there a lot closed, or are there any lands open for you guys to go out and explore?
Actually, there's nothing closed really other than parks with facilities, nature centers, playgrounds, that kind of thing. And the Canaveral National Seashore shut down pretty much as soon as things started hitting the fan. So our county's kind of behind the 8 ball on closing things. And fortunately, we have a lot of wide open spaces. And I think that, is important here in Florida. A lot of people don't realize we have these big public lands, primarily water management lands and wildlife management lands, where there aren't really a lot of trails, but there's a heck of a lot of forest roads you can walk.
Right.
And those are the things that are pretty much staying open.
Well, I'm lucky. I'm the bicycling guy, so 2 and 3 days a week, I'm able to ride on our trail here that did not get closed because it's, what's the word they use for it?
Oh, a
Essential?
transportation corridor.
Yes, it's
Oh.
they didn't close it, and I rode out there today. And what's been nice is to see the families that are actually out, taking advantage of the nature that they can do there. Everybody is really doing a great job of social distancing. I think I saw about maybe a dozen to a dozen and a half people outside today. So
Okay.
people are outside. That's the good part. And I have to say, even in our neighborhood, there are people riding bicycles. Even my father made a comment. I can't believe all the people that have ridden a bicycle and walked by the house, that he now sees them.
He's on a cul-de-sac,
Yeah, he's
so
on a
that's
cul-de-sac.
not that common.
Yeah. Well, I've got to agree. The same thing's happening here. I'm like, I've never seen these people in my life. Like, they never come out of the neighborhood. And, I'm not out every day or even every week, but, frequently enough to where I feel comfortable being familiar with who's out and who's not. But that's definitely been the case for us here. A lot of people out on their bikes and just out walking.
Well, I mean, people need nature. That's the bottom line. Even if it's just like, I'll take a few breaks a day and just go sit out on the porch and watch the squirrels and watch the mockingbirds and, just watch the leaves riffle in the breeze. It's just a little dose of nature. And I think we all need that, especially in stressful times.
I came out of our
Yes.
local grocery store the last time I went to our grocery store, and there was a lady loading her vehicles, raining here, one of the rare occurrences right now, and she was under the hatch of her SUV putting her groceries in. So I spoke up to her and I said, it's a chance to talk to somebody other than your family and kids. And she goes, that's true. She said, but this hasn't been really that bad. She says, yesterday we went out to Canaveral National Park and drove the Merritt Island National Wildlife Route and drove the
Blackfoot Wildlife.
Black Point Drive as a family.
Nice.
They were in the car, in their own little pod, as to say. And, there's an eagle nest out there. There's always alligators. So they were out as a family, still enjoying nature, even if it was in the car.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's definitely one of the things I want to do around here. We don't have nearly the public lands you guys do. Luckily to be on the east side of the state where there's a little bit more of that, but it's still just not, I'm just going to go to the seashore and drive around, that sort of thing. So I'm definitely been jealous about what is still open there in Florida. And the Texas state parks finally closed all their state parks today or yesterday. And they had been leaving some open if you could pay online or do the self-pay when you got there. You could go, but now they're just shutting it all down. So that definitely closes a lot of access, especially in the hill country, for folks, because there's a lot of good parks out there for people. So that's going to dry up that. So So the trailheads, you said you saw like 10 or 12 people on that bike trail. Are any of these lands getting too crowded at
No,
all?
no, I actually sometimes send Sandy a picture back of the trailheads that when she and I were going up there riding this one trailhead, it was common to have a dozen plus cars in there. Now you'll see maybe 3 or 4 cars, and there's multiple spaces in between them.
Yeah, it's more neighborhood use here because there's enough public lands that aren't that far from people, which is
Right.
nice. I know that's not true for other parts of the state, but here we're pretty fortunate with that.
Right. Right. Well, since we're talking about public lands, and kind of one of the primary reasons I wanted to have you guys back on, and what you guys, Sandra, you mentioned a few months ago, was to talk about your latest book, The 50 Hikes in Central Florida. Um, so maybe we could talk a little bit about what the range of Central Florida is, so people can kind of get an idea of where this book encompasses, and the hikes covered, and some of the lands that people may be unfamiliar with.
Well, we came out with the 50 Hikes book about a year and a half ago, and it's the third edition, so it covers the area from Crystal River to Melbourne, down to Tampa Bay, and up into Volusia County. And, typical of this publisher, they like to see some changeover in the book, but they don't really encourage authors to change out all that many hikes. And I always take that as a challenge. So we changed out 10 or 11 hikes on,
Okay.
on that particular. And in doing so, we were able to bring a couple of Florida trail hikes into the mix, which we hadn't done before. I think while you and I were hiking on the Florida Trail back in January, I mentioned we'd come out with a new book called Florida Trail Hikes because I'd been collecting all these really cool places along the Florida Trail for the past 20 years that are like the highlights, best places to go, and wanted to get them out in book form because years ago I pitched to the publisher, how about a 50 hikes on the Florida Trail? And they didn't go for it. So we were kind of left to do that sort of thing on our own. So
Hmm.
we have both books going in Central Florida right now.
What's unique about the Florida Trail Hikes book, because we did it and we know where the prettiest places are, the book is in color. So
Nice.
there are pretty pictures to lure and tempt people to go out and see that beautiful cypress tree or that beautiful savanna. So that was when we started doing this book. We said if this is going to be done, it's going to be a pretty book, and we could almost have called it that because that's really what it is. It's like some of the prettiest places to walk on the Florida Trail.
Yeah, we were kind of inspired by the new edition of 50 Hikes finally being in full color after all these years. And we
Yeah.
got back the proofs and said, ooh, we need to do this with our new Florida Trail book too. So now we have two full color hiking books, which is kind of cool.
So the second book is you guys self-published that one, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, yeah, maybe so we'll talk about both. We could talk about a little bit about, I guess, upgrading the first book, and like what is involved in working with your publisher to, sneak in some of that stuff that you wanted to change.
Well, really, as the authors, you kind of drive that process. They set a deadline and you just have to meet it.
Okay.
What we did, because John cannot walk as far anymore because of a nerve damage issue, but he can bike all day, is we kind of divvied up the work and looked at the trails and said, okay, this particular public land allows both hiking and biking. John, you take the GPS and do the 10-mile route, and I'll go walk the 2.5-mile route.
And we
And
end
Okay.
up at about the same time. That's the amazing part of it.
we both took pictures, we did the GPS tracks, had enough descriptive information that it made it a heck of a lot easier as a team to knock the book out.
To do a 10 or a 12 mile ride, I'm not even trying hard and I'm getting off, taking pictures and doing everything. And I'm still doing close to, 3.5 to 4 miles an hour.
Except for your soft sand and
Well,
the
yeah,
lake.
there's
Yeah.
a handful of pushes like the Lake Wales Ridge where good thing there wasn't a tape recording on the GPS. It's the only thing. It's the only thing in Florida. I mean, I've ridden here in Florida. Every time I pedaled, my pedals have went underwater in some of the places we went. But when I hit the white soft sand, it's push the bike time. But again, we could show up at one trailhead, and we can do a morning hike sometimes. Then we do an afternoon. When I say hike bike, so in one day, if everything was just right, we could actually get 4 hikes in a day.
That's pretty impressive.
So that's what happens when there's 2 of us. That's the
Yeah,
other
and
good part.
we actually did go back to every place in the book that we thought was worth keeping. A couple of them we ditched because they just weren't as good anymore. And then the rest we kind of scouted out and said, these look cool. And one of them for me, which ended up in both of these books, is Prairie Lakes. I don't know if you remember hiking that on the Florida Trail, but that is such a spectacular area. And the fact that you've got the figure 8 loops, so you can
Yeah.
do outer loop and inner loop, you can do all different change ups of it, just makes it a great destination all the way around.
That's turning into be a lot of people's favorite, well, not favorite, but a favorite section when I've been talking to guests on the podcast recently, which is kind of surprising because it's a new revelation. So I'm glad to hear that that's included in the book.
Oh yeah, what's wild is it's been around since the 70s. It was actually built as a backpacking destination before the Florida Trail Association was positive of where exactly the through trail was going to go. And the chapter from our region here from the Space Coast built it and said, well, this is highly likely. I remember talking to Ernie Baldini. He had, helped lay it out. And they really wanted to push for the through trail to be on this side of the state. At the same time, there were people building the loops at Croom and Richland and Citrus with the same idea over on the west side of the state, saying, we're going to draw backpackers. We need the through trail to be over here.
Right. And those are good hiking sections too. I mean, I can't say anything bad about that side of the state either.
No, it's nice. It's mostly high and dry.
Yeah, right. So you guys are researching reviewing those hikes from 50 Hikes in Central Florida and then adding in the Florida Trail hikes. What was it like to compile all of your best hikes on the Florida Trail book? How did you come up with that?
That's been a dream of Sandy's for a long time. She has always had her favorite one. She's always taken even more pictures at some places than others. And she had always talked about wanting to do this book. And one day we just looked at it and says, it's time.
Well, and this was back before Hurricane Michael hit.
Oh, yep.
And originally I had the idea of let's do a book series, the Panhandle, North Florida, and then Central and South Florida, and do 3 books. Well, then Hurricane Michael hit before we had the Panhandle book done. And when it destroyed Econfina, that just broke my heart.
Yeah.
And I said, we need to kind of mitigate our potential future losses by spreading it across the entire state. So wherever a hurricane happens to hit, most of the book is still relevant.
Right.
So that's why we ended up folding it all into one, oversized book.
It was heartbreaking last year when we went up to the Panhandle,
Oh.
and Sandy got together with a few of her Florida Trail friends and finished up all the last of the road walks and did everything else. But when we walked through the area where the hurricane hit directly,
around Bluntstown,
and drove up and down the one particular road, just back and forth through, me being the driver, and just looking at the devastation that was there. And then we snaked around and finally got to where the trail went back into the woods, and all you saw looked like a lumber truck had crashed, and all the wood had just fallen in one place. There was not a trail.
Yeah, I tried to walk. It was at Alta. I tried to walk in there, and you couldn't go more than a foot. I mean, it was
Yeah.
just the amount of effort the volunteers put in over the past 2 years to open those trails is just mind blowing. But they'll never look like they did, and they were so beautiful. And now it's going to be a long time before they look anything like that again.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite sections. And so just, watching everybody's photos come in as they, started hiking, or seeing the volunteers as they attempted to clear that route, it was very sad. Could
Yeah,
almost,
the
yeah.
views are still there, but the botanical beauty is just trashed.
Hmm.
But that's
So,
why 1,100 miles of trail. So, as long as it doesn't wipe the entire state out, you might say, there's always some
yeah,
place you can go. And you can also come back in 5 years or 10 years and look and see how much it's changed and where it's grown back. That's always a unique perspective, because since Sandy and I started hiking, we walked into a place where they had done a clear cut, and they hadn't left a single tree. There was no way to know where the trail was. And we just both looked at it and we just shook our head. And fortunately, we had a GPS track, so we knew basically where to go to check everything. But we went back there, was it the year before last? And the trees are now much over our heads. There's a little bit of shade provided there, and you feel like you're walking through a young forest.
right. So, in the end, how many miles of trail is incorporated in that book?
That's a good question. I don't know if I can actually stand here and summarize it that quickly. But I mean, there are put it this way, the very shortest hike is here for Joan Jarvis, because it's in Oviedo. It's the half-mile boardwalk at Round Lake Park.
Mm,
It's just one of those cute urban things that nobody knows is part of the Florida Trail, and it is in her neighborhood. So that's the shortest one. The longest one is the eastern side of Eglin, and actually we have them in here back to back with Neguse. So you could use the book to do them both and do like 3 to 5 nights out.
Park there. I used to own a home over in that area. I have done 20 years of driving through and around there. And until I did my Florida Trail hike through that section and came to it, I had no idea it was there. And it's absolutely gorgeous. Just a nice, simple little park in a neighborhood.
well, that was one of the things when we got into geocaching, was looking at just getting on Google Maps and just seeing all these little parks that popped up that I didn't even know existed. So I can imagine that, having an additional guidebook and seeing what's closer to your neighborhood with more details is going to be extremely valuable, um, to just, people who don't want to do a full Florida Trail hike but want to do shorter sections, or, a quick little day hike. So I guess maybe talk about the structure of the book for people. How is it set up?
Well, it's broken up kind of to parallel the Guthook app. So the sections mirror exactly what's in Guthook: South Florida, Central Florida West, kind of like that. And then within each of those, you have anywhere from 5 to 8 hikes or so. And some of those are a segment with an overview, let's say St. Mark's, that tells you how to go through and hike the entire St. Mark's section, what's worth seeing in the St. Mark's section if you only have a little bit of time, and then the full blow by blow details of 3 pieces of the St. Mark's section to give you about 25 miles of hiking in there. So that's
Okay.
kind of how it's broken up.
And what we did
Okay.
on this book also, that we've never done in any of our books before, is because of our travel writing background, and because we did go out and sample and revisit everything that's in here, we stopped at base camps. We stayed at a hotel, a small place. We ate at all the local restaurants. And we also looked if there happened to be a few other non-Florida Trail hikes that if you went and spent a weekend there or a long weekend there, that you could go out and go do something different, each day, and then go someplace and have dinner, and then go take a nice shower, stay at a B&B in certain cases. And we tried to make it a tourism hiking book as well.
So basically, each of the geographic sections, like I've got Central Florida West open here, we have 2 and 3 pages of just towns that are along the Florida Trail, like Denellen, where I used to live, and recommending places to stay, places to eat, some outfitters you can go kayaking with, and other things in the area you can do besides hike the Florida Trail. So you
Okay.
can use it for vacation planning for hiking.
Well, we
That's
realize
kind of
that, like for us right now, since I can't hike, is if a family may go out and maybe the spouse isn't a hiker, isn't a long distance hiker, or maybe one of the children wants to do something else, the family can still go out. Mom can go do one thing with one of the kids, dad can do something with another kid, then they can get back, take a shower, and then go someplace and have dinner and talk about what they saw and plan what they're going to do the next day.
But if it's in here, we've been there.
That's really kind of cool. Like vacation hiking. I don't think I've come across a book that has been outlined like that. So in my head, it feels like a travel guidebook you get for, coming into the state of Florida and here's what you can see, but uh, you have hikes along with it too. So that sounds actually really pretty cool.
Yeah, it's more organized around the
Yeah, it's a
hiking,
hiking book,
but the travel information is up front in every chapter. So it helps you sit there with the map in the front of the chapter and say, oh, okay, so Bellevue's here and here's what I can hike. But look, I can go to the Santos Bike Trail or to Paradise Springs and go diving, that kind of thing.
we're going to show a different group something they didn't know was there.
Right.
Your hikers are going to keep coming back. They're going to hike. But sometimes when they find out, wow, I'm a diver as well, and I could actually go dive and do Paradise Springs.
Yeah, we saw this as very much more of a general interest book because the Florida Trail Guide is for the hardcore hiker. I mean, for the
Hmm.
people who know they're going to put in the miles, know they're going to plan longer hikes, and, it has those details to it. This is for more the casual hiker who's out there saying, what can I do in Florida? Oh, here's a cool place to go.
Right. So what are some of the favorite hikes that you revisited that you included in this book?
Well, one of the ones that's my ultimate favorite is Rice Creek. I can't tell you how many times I've been back there to do the loop and down, down the boardwalk there. So that's a big one. The
There was,
Soptop River
oh,
up in the Apalachicola National Forest, because if you're going to have one entry level hike for people to go visit the Apalachicola National Forest, that's the one. And then, of course, we have 2 swamp hikes too. But, the Sopchoppy River is the one that anybody can do and feel good about.
Well, we
okay.
also put Big Cypress in the book,
Yep.
but we put it in a different way. We said, don't go hike from one end of the swamp on 41 all the way to I-75. Let's face it, that's a hardcore hike. You got to know what you're doing, or you got to want to go do that. So we did come in from the north and go a little ways and come back out. Come in from the south, go in a little ways and come back out.
Yeah, basically from Oasis to 7 Mile as an
Hmm.
overnighter, and from I-75 to Ivy Camp as a day hike or an overnighter. And then if you're comfortable with doing those, then if you want to try the whole thing, go for it.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good taste because you get to avoid, depending on the season you decide to tromp through there, you're mostly avoiding a lot of the mud and the water. Um, so that's a good taste of Big Cypress for sure.
Well, that's what this book is. I mean, your hardcore hikers, they're going to pick up the trail guide. They're going to get gut hook, and they're going to go hike the Florida Trail. We're putting pretty pictures in front of people, talking about people when we stand in front of them and on through the website, saying we have some beautiful places here to go. And we're not looking for the through hiker to come try to visit, see these places. We're looking for those other people that don't know what's in their own backyard, or have just moved into Florida and they don't know what's here. They either, they're new to hiking, or I'm going to say this, their age is getting up there and maybe they're not willing to go out and do a 8, 9, 10, or 15-mile hike anymore. They want to spend all day in the woods and only cover 6, 7 miles maybe.
But like down in the Brooksville area, a lot of people don't realize you can hop off I-75 at US 301, or exit 301 rather, which takes you to US 301 at Ridge Manor. And in 5 minutes off I-75, you can do the Cypress Lakes Trail there, which is, a little over 3 miles to go out and back on the Florida Trail through a really pretty botanical area, or do quite a few miles in Croom along the Withlacoochee River on the river bluffs through all the big cypresses. So, and both of those are literally right there off the interstate. But unless you wave a flag and say, hey, people, come look at these, they don't know they're there.
Right.
So we've got things like that. And then the favorites, but more obscure places like Osceola, which, I brag about to friends all over the country. There is nothing like the Osceola anywhere in this country. It is just weird. And so we've got the whole Osceola piece in there, going both north and south out of the trailhead there on Goose Pasture.
Okay. Now, you've done some presentations on this book so far?
Yeah.
Okay.
We've some at libraries. So we did one at REI.
Mm-hmm. Done
What,
for a couple of chapters even.
Yep.
Oh, okay. What's the overall reaction, and what kind of questions are people asking about the Florida Trail?
Well, people are always asking the typical gear questions.
Well, the nice part is we did this book. We had some issues with our printer on this particular book. So we will do a second printing sometime in the future and make a few changes. And like the cover, we're not happy with certain things because of just how it lays, little simple things like that. So we've not went out and beat a drum a great deal. We've not offered this book to REI or any of the other outfitters that we work with, because we want the next version of it to be what they have. And I was recently counting books in the book room, and we've sold out at least half of them by just word of mouth and on the website.
Okay.
Which is not too shabby for bringing it out in October.
No, that's pretty good. I guess when do you think a second printing is going to happen?
Well, we originally were talking about doing it this spring specifically because REI would like to carry it. But given that REI is shut down right now, and so are our other outlets, we're waiting.
Yeah, because normally when we sell books to REI or some of the others, I package them up sometimes 6, sometimes a dozen, sometimes 2 dozen books. And when you start sending out books in those numbers, the books disappear fast. So to have half of a printing disappear without doing any bulk sales like that's what tells us how popular the book is. I keep them already packaged here and ready to go. And when I go to the post office, I carry one of each of our books with me. And I would say once a week or so, by the time I get to the post office, and before I walk in, I go bring up the email and look, there's another new order.
Oh, and he bicycles
I ride the bicycle to the post office.
Nice.
All of the books are delivered by bike.
Yeah, right now, if this new greener version of it, I do the 11-mile each way trip to to our post office.
Nice, saving some carbon emissions there.
Except for crates. Anytime somebody orders, I think so far the most I've taken is 8 books, and I had 4 in each bag.
Now, of course, whenever we come out with a guidebook, things change almost immediately. So what we got hit on with this one was Forever Florida. All these years, they've been a private, nonprofit foundation, and it was okay for us to hike through, but you couldn't really park there. Then they partnered with the local chapter and opened this beautiful new trailhead last year. And I went over there with Luann and we hiked, which, I'd done the hike before, but she hadn't. So we hiked from Forever, Florida up to Bull Creek. And I said, okay, now I can write it up from fresh eyes. So, wrote it up, put it in the book. It's all ready to go. Wrote this wonderful thing about all the things that Forever Florida does, and they closed.
Yeah.
It's like, Now, through hikers can still go through there, and day hikers can as well, but it's no longer logistically easy to park anywhere nearby. So that's a chapter we're going to have to update, and that's why we're thinking, even though I wouldn't normally say let's do a second edition of a new book so soon, we may end up doing that just to trim a few things down where changes occurred.
Right. Well, one thing I was impressed on when we went and hiked was just how much trail data you're always collecting. You're taking pictures, you're making notes, and it seems like you are constantly just got this like encyclopedia of knowledge going in your head, or maybe just a stack of papers on your desk. But I guess, yeah, how do you keep all of that organized?
Before she tells you, I have to tell you the story. When we went to try to do our through hike on the Appalachian Trail and made it a little over 500 miles. Now remember, this is two people out hiking. We didn't carry any extremely high-end camera equipment or anything, just some nicer point and shoots. Well, when we finally came home and she downloaded and did everything through there, we had approximately 5,000 photos. 500 miles, 5,000 photos. Let's think about that for a moment.
But one of them ended up in the Appalachian Trail calendar.
It was the calendar, but the bad part of it is now, because I've come along so much since we started that particular hike, we now have, when I go biking, I carry two cameras. I carry a point and shoot just to take as I'm moving and everything. And if I come to a place that's like, wow, I park the bike, get out the good camera and set up and take a few shots there. So now when we're doing one of these trips, doing research and gathering data and everything, we have basically 4 cameras to download now.
Yeah, plus the video off the iPhone.
Oh my goodness.
Call it an obsestion.
Yeah.
That's why we don't camp as often when we're doing these kind of trips. We'll stay in a state park lodge, or we'll do something like that. But we have to carry a power strip to plug everything in, to charge it up, and do everything like that. But no, she is just that kind. She has that kind of a level of detail, and I do just not as much as she does.
I'm very fortunate to have a very good memory and a spatial memory. I can do, kind of a walkthrough in my mind of most trails I've been on, which sounds crazy, but I finally realized that instead of talking into, for years, it was like a tape recorder, and then I switched to a digital recorder, and then finally the iPhone came along, and I would talk into it and transcribe everything. One day, the light bulb came on that said, if I just take a lot of pictures, I can describe this without talking while I'm hiking.
Yeah.
And I started doing that, and it's made describing trails much easier. I mean, if I need to take an important note, like you were seeing when we were hiking, yeah, I'll screenshot the app to know where I was or whatever, write a little note down in the iPhone. But I don't go to the level of obsessive that I did once, other than taking photos.
But she also is extremely experienced at what she does.
Yeah. Well, I've been doing database work for like 35, 40 years.
She again, that's why, she went to a conference a couple of years ago where somebody that was doing a book, and he was one of their speakers, and they asked her to join, and it was his first book, and they looked at her and said, well, we want to write a bio for him. She said, well, I've done like 15 trail guides alone. And they're like, huh? And it's like, yeah. So, every time you write a book, you write a trail up, or you do something like that. And even I'm being the new writer in the bunch here, I can feel and see more and more how much I improve and how much more I remember. So, you have to train your brain to do that. And she's had that brain trained for quite a while.
But, some things have changed over time. And going back to the 50 Hikes book, when I wrote the first 50 Hikes book, I did it in very long paragraphs with a lot of description about the natural world. And that was kind of a hallmark, that other writers weren't doing that at the time. And a lot of writers ended up copying me doing that. Well, it's come full circle that people don't want to read things that are that long anymore. They want their
Yeah.
text chunked up because they've gotten used to reading on their phones. So even in the books, the publishers are saying, please don't write paragraphs more than a sentence or two long. Don't use long sentences. For God's sake, don't describe the life cycle of the gopher tortoise. You don't have space for that. And I've learned, okay, let it go, let it go. There is a website, and guess what? We can have a gopher tortoise page that talks about that instead of it being on the hike.
Yeah, the long
Right.
version is in the book, and when you go read about it, you've got a wonderful sampling. If you want to know more about it, come to the website because it's there in the website, and it's in a much, much, much longer format.
Yeah.
Even there, I've had to, one of the things that this lockdown has done is had me go back to the website and start going back to the older pages because it's 14 years old and updating things, cleaning them up, and also skinning down the text and chunking it so people can read it better on iPhones because most of our readers are
Yeah.
indeed on mobile.
Right. Right. Yeah, and you haven't developed some sort of special Florida Hikes app yet, so
Well, no, we've talked to people about that. The thing is, the website works great on mobile,
yeah.
and oh gosh, the amount of work behind the scenes that goes into keeping an app updated. I mean, you can just imagine with Guthook. Doing that for the whole Florida Hikes website would just drive me nuts.
I'm going to sum it up even simpler. I'm the one out there riding the bicycle. I'm doing all these out, and I'm the guy that'll go up and talk to the tree, the turtle, anybody else, and I'll be describing some things, what's there, and I'll mention Florida Hikes, and a lot of times the people will bring up their phone and say, "Well, I'm out rollerblading today, and this is how I found this beautiful bike path in Mims, Florida." Was because I was on your website. So
Right.
it works. That's what's nice is, people are used to using the website. And so we may not catch as many people with the apps, but the website is just such a fantastic tool that most people I meet out and I tell them about the website, they already know. That's an amazing thing.
Oh, and I got to tell you about something I think so funny because I am so map oriented. You'd think I would have caught on to this. I just we did an email. We do a regular e-news, probably 6 to 8 times a year, out to a mailing list of people who sign up on here. And I finally had to describe something that the website does that I only recently learned the website does. And that was with an upgrade to a piece of software that we use for mapping. It now has the ability on any map on any page of the website. There's a search bar. You can type in the name of a city and it'll zoom into it. There's also a little icon in the upper right-hand corner that's like your GPS trigger locator thing. If you click on that, the website asks you, do you want to tell the website your address or where you're located? And if you do, it zooms into where you are.
Oh, nice.
I
And then
had no idea it did that until I was playing on the phone one day, and I'm like, oh my God. So it's an app if it can do that.
yeah, no, it's like so handy for people. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So if you maybe update this book, what other books are possibly on the horizon?
Well, we're not sure if we're going to be able to do the new edition of the Florida Trail Guide this year because of the whole coronavirus thing. So many businesses are shut down along the trail that we don't know if they'll reopen.
Yeah, we're terrified the number of mom and pops places that we swing by and check on, and then I call each one before we do the book. That those people were hanging on by a thread. They really appreciated that a through hiker would come in and have a meal, take food out with them, or buy something. That really helps. So we don't know how long we're going to be locked down, and how many of these little hotels may not make it, and restaurants. And because of how much time it takes us to physically drive the trail, basically twice.
Yeah, we basically drive end to end on the trail in both directions from home to check every business.
So, not knowing when we will be allowed to go out and do something like that. And fortunately, we don't see anything now, especially with what's happening, the trail making any major changes now. There's talk of some out there, but because of what's happened here, now the trail's going to stay for a while.
Well, specifically because volunteers can't get out and work on the trail.
Yeah.
We don't think there will be any major changes to the route over the summer months. And usually it's June and July we're putting the book together. So, if we're not doing a new guidebook this year, but, we update the Florida Trail Hikes later in the year, something we've talked about is something like a gift book, something maybe memoir-ish. I've got plenty to talk about over 20 plus years. Something that would be more, not a guide, but just something more interesting about the trail.
And we've also discussed actually doing a photo book.
Yeah, like a mini coffee table book.
A mini coffee table book of the pretty places that we've seen along the way, and do things like that. Again, another, again, small book projects, not like doing a trail guide.
Yeah.
And so
what about, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Now, and again, at the same time, we're doing the trail, we're doing the hiking. Again, me with a bum leg, I become a great driver and dropping people off, and I can go in about a half mile to a mile and turn around and come back. So we're looking at other things out there. She's been updating our website with a lot more cycling. As a matter of fact, we recently had a local publication contact us and say, we want to do the riding ourselves, but we know you've been to all those trails. Could we get some pictures from you? So we've become a provider for photographs for some of the other publications out there now for the trails on the cycling side. And at the same time, Sandy's had, she's had a whole bunch of pet projects throughout her lifetime. And again, this book here is one of them. And she's got to the point in life that she's getting to be more creative and not just turn left at the second oak tree and walk 50 paces. She's a very talented writer. And like she said, a memoir of some kind is, in the works out there. Is that?
Well, and I kind of did a mini memoir very recently. I've had this on the back burner for over 9 years now. I took my mother on a month-long trip through the Southeast to see public gardens during the azalea blooming season. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to write a little book about it before she died, and I never did. So I just recently wrote an ebook, and I launched a new website called Gardens Visitor. And what it is, it's kind of, structured like Florida Hikes with a map and a way to look for the gardens. But I'm putting the gardens on there that my mom and I went to together, and then the gardens that I went to with my parents, and gardens that John and I have gone to.
And as we travel more, we will continue to add gardens.
But it's more, there's more story in there than it is just go here, do this.
Yeah.
Personal story. So it's more memoir-ish.
So this is a different direction for her. She's having fun with it. Yep. She's, reliving some wonderful times she had with her mom. And she's finding some of the things her mom photographed that she didn't know she'd photographed. And so, it's a good thing for her. And she is the garden person. Every time we travel somewhere, even if I don't do it, she goes and does the garden. So to turn gardening Right now we've turned bicycling into a lot of our travel because we hit the local bicycling anytime we travel across the country now. So at the same time, to go for a bike ride in one part of the day and go visit a garden for another part of the day, that may become our new travel path.
I like it. So I'm going to go a bunch of different ways here. I was going to suggest a biking, a guide or a memoir as well for on that aspect, just because I know how important that is to you, John. And that would be a really cool way to just, broaden, your interests. But I'm also a gardener and I love gardens too. So when I saw that you had done the Garden Visitor website and your Instagram account, I was like, oh, this is exciting because I too like going to botanic gardens. So I'm excited about that. And I really like the idea of that memoir with your mom because I don't know, there's like a lot of good garden writing out there, and I'm sure you would fit right in with all the good garden writers, and it would be awesome to see and to read that experience, just something different.
Well, that's it. I'm just dabbling and having fun with it right now.
On the photography, back to all those pictures.
Yeah.
Well, give her a whole bunch of things that are blooming. Give her a high quality camera and the light being just right. And you name a plant, she probably has a photo of it somewhere if she's seen it. So
Yeah.
if I don't, when you see her website, it only has a handful of gardens on it right now. Is all she's got in, but she's got a virtual tour on it. I know I go out and she's working at the other end of the house, and I have the iPad here on, so I can go visit and see what she's doing.
Well, the other thing too is I have, slides going back to the late 50s that both my mother and my grandmother took at gardens all over the East Coast, including stuff that we did, when I was a kid and we went to gardens in the Carolinas and in Florida. So I'm going to have fun going through those, scanning those, and pulling out stuff of places that aren't even there anymore, just to be able to get that stuff online for people to go, ooh, just like I am.
To have a single source, which really there's not something like that out there, that would basically, tell you about the gardens, tell you what's there, tell you the history of the gardens. That's the amazing part, is some of the things we've learned about even some of the gardens local. Somebody just recently gave us a history book of one of the gardens we have here, and it's probably an inch and a half thick, and gives all this history that nobody in the world knows, and you could never tell anybody all of it, but there's some neat little tidbits it would be nice to share, and the only way you're going to know that is if you go read that inch and a half thick book.
But now it's just the fun project.
Yes. But it will grow.
Well, you've got to have the pet projects on the side just to keep. I mean, it's not like you don't enjoy the Florida Trail and don't enjoy all that, but at the same time, I know it's your work, and so it's nice to have those things on the side that cultivate the creativity and keep things interesting.
Oh yeah, well then there's a second draft of a novel I have to do.
Yeah, that's right.
Another idea for another novel that I'd like to write. So yeah.
And you have to remember the Florida Trail for us. We have this discussion a great deal. Is right now we're watching my father. Keeping a good eye on my father. He's 88 years old. He was in the room in 1957 when they launched the first Atlas rocket. He's the last of the space pioneers that are like that. So we're in the same neighborhood and keeping a good eye on him. But when my father's no longer with us, other than the beautiful skies, the Florida Trail, and me liking the water and bicycling, there's a lot more places to see other than Florida.
Yeah.
So we that's why you will see we usually aren't here during the summer. We will this year.
Yeah.
But normally, we take off. 2 years ago it was Michigan. Last year this was our trip west, and Ohio, and just go and see all these places and experience. Now we'll make sure we hit even more gardens when we do it. But at the same time, I'm a native Floridian, and the standing joke is, other than being a snow skier, I've never spent any time around snow. Sandy lived in Pittsburgh where it snows, so we're not sure how I would take a foot, 2 or 10 of snow. So we may have to make sure we come back to Florida for winters.
Snow is good. You don't have to drive in it.
but we
Yes.
come back and devote part of our time and part of our our future out there to keeping up Florida, the Florida Trail, the bicycling here, the waters, and everything like that. And then at another time of the year, we go somewhere else, and it may not be the same place over and over. So, that's our unknown future out there. But right now, we'll probably always have at least a toehold in Florida.
Right. Right. And I was going to mention your Trails and Travel website as well, but you mentioned that a little bit, and I know you can't travel this summer, but was there anywhere you were planning on going this summer?
Yeah.
We've already missed the Alabama conference. That was the first thing we were
Yeah,
going to go
we,
to.
we were supposed to be speaking at the Alabama Hiking Trails Conference. We planned to go hiking up at Pinhoti. We were going to hit all the gardens in that part of Alabama.
In the middle of azalea season.
Yep, and up in North
Yeah.
Georgia and southern Tennessee. So yeah, that's all been thrown by the
Then
wayside.
we were going into West Virginia to a place I don't know if you've been. I had never been. The
Yeah,
Gorge.
New River Gorge.
Oh, I've heard of it.
We were supposed to give a talk at Trail Days in Damascus.
Mm.
And we were supposed to have a conference in Burlington, Vermont. And I believe all of that has been canceled.
Yeah.
So, at this point, it's pull back to the website and clean stuff up. And
Yeah.
Trails and Travel isn't going away. I've just put it on the back burner while I'm working on the garden website, and then we'll switch gears again and get that more focused on the hiking, biking, and museum type stuff.
And we still talk about it because we were talking about it at different, because of my gift of gab. We've actually thought about all the unique people that we meet along the way.
Yeah.
Try to come up with a way to incorporate those. So yeah, well, that's the one part. Again, not having a television. We basically we do a lot of talking and a lot of reading, and we discuss things. We can have a board meeting at our dining room table or our breakfast nook or sitting in the library. That's what our standing joke is. And she made a good point a few days ago, and she said, I'm glad it works like this because I don't mind being locked up with you. And she says, we can't.
If I had to be locked up with someone, I'm glad it's John.
That's what makes this whole thing work. Is just how well we function, we work together. It's just It's an amazing thing. I've never had anything like this in my life, so it's like wow. But boy, like you said, show up on a trailhead, point me off in a direction with a bike, give her a set of walking poles. And we meet back, we go out and have a nice lunch somewhere, we talk about what we saw, we go to the next place, and we do it again. It's not a bad life.
No, it seems like you guys have like the perfect situation going, and just never-ending ideas, and great companionship and getting things done, and it just sounds perfect almost. I do want to transfer. I do want to transition to one thing before to end. I wanted to talk about the Econ land swap. If you could highlight that a little bit so people would know a little bit about what's going on there.
Okay, the simplest way to explain this is a gentleman bought a piece of land that was a former ranch in an area in Seminole County that is in the designated rural boundary. And what that means, it can only be zoned certain ways. Now, he then applied for a different zoning outside of what rural boundary allowed, and they turned him down, of course. Well, his lawyer sued the county because he feels he should have the zoning he wants, rural boundary or not. And the county got kind of cold feet, like, what do we do? Then his lawyer tendered the county an offer that we'll give you all this land on the east side of the river if you give us the Econ River Wilderness area on the west side of the river, which adjoins the University of Central Florida. Okay. Technically, the county does not need to do a thing. They are within their right legally to say no. Why are you even offering this to us? But there are people on the county commission who want to hear it out. That's why it's become a very hot button issue. It's not the first instance, nor will it be the last instance in Florida where someone feels they have more rights than they actually do under the current law, and they try to pursue those rights through lawsuits. I don't know if you heard about what's happening in Walton County right now, but a group
No.
of landowners, including former Governor Mike Huckabee, are suing Walton County because they've shut down the beaches, and that's our land. They have their multi-million houses on the beach. Now, the thing is, they've sued Walton County before to say we don't want people walking in front of our houses. So it's a longer term issue.
I remember that.
Property rights. That's different. But these things go on in Florida. Fortunately, there are a lot of people aware of what's going on in Seminole County. So there is a lot of public pushback, a lot of public support, and it just has to all go through the right legal channels.
As soon as we heard this was happening, we headed over. I hopped on a bike. She took off on the foot, and we did the property. I missed one of the prettiest places there with all the cypress trees and a little creek water. I actually went back in to make sure I didn't miss it. And it's a phenomenal piece of property. It is now surrounded by development, and that's fine because all these people in the development now have a place to go. And while we were out there, we saw joggers, we saw people walking. So, my thought is we don't need a house on every piece of property. We need to leave something out there woodsy. I don't care, if the college is right next door. Even the college kids, that's what their jogger was on. We saw.
Absolutely.
They're out there in this beautiful piece of property, completely surrounded by, people.
But we don't live in that county anymore, so we don't have the influence we once did with it. I wrote an editorial, made it known to the county commissioners, sent it out to a number of people to spread it around, and hopefully the county does the right thing and does right by its citizens, that when you buy a piece of land with taxpayer money, specifically, and the sign even says there, bought for and by the citizens of Seminole County, for the protection of this land, they need to live up to that.
Right.
Kind of the bottom line on it.
So is there anything anybody can do other than just reaching out, if they live in the county, reaching out to the county commissioners, or even if they don't live in the county?
That is the main thing, because they are the bottom line with it. They're the ones who end up making the decisions.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I saw all that going on, and I think you told me a little bit about that when we talked in January, but I wanted to highlight that here just in case anybody was unfamiliar and they wanted to hear about it and wanted to do something. So, cool. Well, is there anything else you guys want to highlight before we wind down?
Well, I'm just glad there's people still out there enjoying nature, even though this is not a wonderful time for any of us on the planet.
But at the same time, you have to look at the bright side. Is like you said, you're seeing people in your neighborhood you haven't seen out. Maybe, people come home in their air-conditioned car, they hit the garage button, they drive in, they close the door, and they never step outside again. There's too many people that have been disconnected from nature for so long. So every time I see someone out with a young child, I make sure I make a positive comment to them that they're out there, with that child, showing them nature. Well, maybe that's the silver lining to what we're going through right now, is the fact that people are going out, they're walking in the woods, they're riding their bicycle on the bike trails, and they're seeing other people out there enjoying it as well. And again, with our social distancing, as I said, still.
Yeah.
But maybe they're getting a taste of what they forgot about or what they may have never done before.
And important to me in particular is they're getting a taste of it, and then they'll want to be the ones to stand up and say, no, you shouldn't put a subdivision on our natural land.
Yeah.
Anybody that went into that piece of property and goes back to where that creek is going in between all the cypress trees, and then
That's the Yukon River.
the little
Yeah.
creek that goes into the Yukon.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
There's a little meandering creek
Mhm.
that just S's and turns through up to 3 foot tall cypress knees. It is just it's one of those places that very few people ever get to even see something like that. And there it is, right in the middle of a big giant urban area. So if people went out, walked there, and just saw that one piece right through there, I guarantee you they'd want to save that piece of property.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for coming back on the podcast for a second time. I know that I felt like when we were hiking in January that I could just pick your brain all the time, all day long, and come up with all sorts of interesting stories. And I'm sure you could tell Sandra, and I'm sure, John, that you have just as many to share as well. So hopefully this isn't your last time on the podcast. Definitely like to have you guys back on in the future for more books, more trail updates, more adventuring updates too.
Well, thanks, and keep safe out there. And
You're getting the word out. That's a different version of ours.
Yeah.
We realized since we started finally doing YouTube and things like that, we realized that what an audience is out there.
audiences consume information in different ways.
Yes.
So you're out there spreading breadcrumbs for those people to come and do all these things we enjoy, and like you say, and then maybe helpfully protect and save those lands that we love.
That's it for the episode. I hope you liked hearing from Sandra and John. Of course, nearly 2 months later from recording this episode, so much has already changed with the opening up of public lands and the challenge to recreate responsibly. I hope y'all are getting out there to hike and explore locally as much as possible and taking the podcast with you along the way. If you've enjoyed the podcast these last 2 years, could you take a minute and leave a 5-star rating and review on iTunes? Or hit subscribe in whatever podcatcher you listen to. I would greatly appreciate it. And of course, tell your hiking friends. This podcast can be found at orangeblaze.thegardenpathpodcast.com and on Instagram as Orange Blaze Podcast and Facebook as Official Orange Blaze Podcast. All right, happy hiking.